Welcome to On Top of the Covers, a weekly podcast by Orlove, dedicated to all the amazing human beings that are following us and listen along. We appreciate you guys, the creative visionaries, entrepreneurs. We got artists, makers, disruptors, people really, trying to push boundaries around the world. And we're really, really grateful that we have you every single week. As you guys may or may not know, depending on if you're new or not, we feature a lot of inspirational stories of people contributing to the culture of music. That's kind of like our common bond, right? But there's a lot of different ways you can contribute, and it's not just about how they do it, but, sometimes it's creatively, sometimes it's artistically, sometimes it's, personally or professionally. There's so many different ways that they're, creating in general, right? And for those of you that are new, I'm Matt Gottesman. I'm your host and I'm director of the Orlove brands. I really appreciate you guys being here. You can find us on Instagram at We Are Orlove. Please reach out. We answer every single text and DM. You can reach out personally at Matt Gottesman. It is me who's been managing the account and all my accounts for years. I answer every single text, DM, reply, response. It's crazy, but it's community, and that's how that goes. So
how about that?
Right? So it's I'm 8 years deep on that run.
Nice.
So, as we say, music is one of the biggest connectors in the world. It's a common bond. So let's open up these conversations on not just art, but the contributors' missions. We really like demonstrating unconventional ways and different paths to success. So we're going to dive right in. I've got another incredible guest. To some, you might know him as Mike Brillstein, but most, the Mike B, internationally acclaimed DJ, founding member of the legendary Banana Split Party, alongside DJ AM and Steve Aoki, and just, I for the few minutes I've already gotten a chance to talk to him beforehand, just kind of chopping up a really awesome human being, and we're gonna talk about. Thank you. You can feel a vibe though. You can always feel somebody's energy, and you're like, "Ooh, I'm gonna have to really work harder on this one," or "Oh, this is gonna be so much flow."
That's good. I hope I'm the flowing one.
Yeah, you are. You definitely are, man. You are. And for everybody listening, before we dive in, best described as a multi-genre purist, which I love. LA native. Been entrenched. What's that?
I've had people ask me if they could borrow that before, which I always thought was weird. Like, I came up with the multi-genre purist thing, I don't know, like 12 or 13 years ago. It starts to sound silly to me now, but like I've had people say like, "Hey, can I use that?" And I'm like, well, no. Actually,
I've trademarked that.
I guess they can, but it's like, I feel like once you have I feel like I got common law rights to it at this point.
There you go.
But anyway, go on. Tell them more. Tell them more about me.
Tell them more how awesome you are. I use multidisciplinary creative. I've used that one.
Nice.
Purist is a big one. I use with a lot of within, but not like multi-genre, but purist. I love that.
Yes.
Multidisciplinary creatives or purists. So you've been entrenched in underground music on both coasts for decades, and then in 2011, you were awarded Best Club DJ by Los Angeles Magazine. That's a big deal. And I mentioned to the crowd, founding member of the legendary Banana Split Party alongside DJ AM and Steve Aoki. You're often credited as a driving force behind bringing new electronic music back to LA club world. We're going to talk about that, actually, especially when we go through your background. You're currently DJing everywhere from EDC to the darkest late night warehouses. I love that. And you continue to produce music as part of several collaborative projects and under countless aliases. Hopefully you'll tell us what those are.
There's a lot.
Yeah, with releases by Untitled Tastemaking, Turbo Records, Green Velvet's legendary Relief imprint, and the world famous Dirty Bird. So thank you for being here, man. I really, like I said earlier,
my pleasure.
I really appreciate your time. Yeah, incredible, man. We typically do our rapid fire questions first. Why? Because I hate doing anything else like everybody else when they save them for the end. So we do them first because we love to get into the mindset of the guest of like where it can go in any different direction, right? And so if you're ready, we're going to do that. And then I want to dive into your background.
I'm ready. I'm ready for anything.
Okay, beautiful. So the first question, if all music was wiped away from the face of this earth, and you could only save 3 albums. Now, this is the DJ I'm talking to, everybody. So, you can only save 3 albums to listen to for the rest of your life. What would they be?
I would say Led Zeppelin, Houses of the Holy, KMD's Mr. Hood, and like a good rendition of Bolero's Ravel.
Oof. Wow.
Ravel's Bolero. I'm sorry. It's early here.
No, that's okay. All good choices not have been chosen yet. I feel like somebody was tiptoeing around Led Zeppelin, one of our past guests, but like didn't make their three, but they like a good case could be made for. You know?
Well, instantly I was just trying to think when you asked that question, like what would, you would need a lot of different moods.
Yes,
like what could you get the most mileage out of? And then obviously,
yes,
I'm a DJ, so like no compilations or soundtracks allowed. Like it has to be like albums. So Houses of the Holy has so many different vibes, and it's probably not even the best Led Zeppelin album, but I feel like it's got so much like flow to it and so many different vibes. And then Mr. Hood, I don't even know. I wouldn't say it's my favorite rap album, but it's so like cinematic and it's just so different than anything else. And I would need some hip hop at some point because that's just kind of like my main love.
And Bolero's
and
Bolero.
and then Bolero's Bolero. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like I need something to like wake up and chill.
Right.
If I had a second chance to answer, I would probably figure out some sort of jazz album or something to get in there. But I mean, I don't know. Bolero's kind of jazzy.
Yeah,
it's jazzy enough.
I think these are great choices. And a couple of interesting things. One, you brought up a very good point. Like you have to have all the different moods covered, especially if it's a lifetime. Two, ironically, not so ironically, a lot of our guests, especially in the electronic circuit, hip hop was one of their first, or if not one of the first, love. Like from the 90s, 80s,
yeah.
90s. Let's be very clear.
In many ways, house and hip hop come from, a similar place. Mm-hmm. I mean, not like geographically, but just, musically and emotionally.
Right.
And at one point, specifically in the late 80s and early 90s, really coexisted before the kind of division in the mid and late 90s. Mm-hmm. So I think if you're of a certain age, it just, there's like a certain amount of house music that you just, is thrown into hip hop sets. And
so true. There's definitely a lot of cross-pollinating. Question 2. Mm-hmm. Which sometimes relates to question 1. Name an influential person, living or non-living. It could be any time throughout all of history if you want, that if you could interact with for one night, who would it be? Or one whole day?
That's a difficult one because it's hard to say. I mean, I'm tempted to say my own father because he passed many years ago. And as I get older, I long for his advice and such. But also I would say maybe like Frank Zappa, if we're talking like celebrities.
Anybody you want?
Yeah, I have so many questions for that guy. And I got to meet him when I was really, really young, but like I met him before I even knew who he was. But I often think like, what would that guy do?
All right. Right. Both viable choices, by the way. Both are viable choices. Your pop's your pops. Mine passed 2 years ago.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It's a very spiritual experience. I talk with him every day. But yeah, it's an interesting thing when you rely on them. He was a mentor and best friend. When you rely on them for that beautiful back and forth banter, support, looking and dissecting things, and hearing their wisdom. But then, you got to channel that wisdom and channel them, right? So it's so I hear you. Yeah. And then Frank Zappa is Frank Zappa.
Yeah. Well, Frank Zappa is Frank Zappa, and he was very. I tend to, for better or worse, be very contrary when it comes to my approach to DJ world, and a lot of decisions that I've made, like it seemed like he was always just trying to do things that were not the same, and he was a little more, he had, I think, a little more like hate in his heart than I did when it came to his approach to making music, and he really wanted to like expose, like the stupidity of the world and all these things. But like, I just always wondered where that really came from and how and why his music appealed to me so much when I was like 15, 16, when it was like made to be unpleasant in a way. And I think that like prepped me for a lot of like
Critical thinking for the rest of your life.
Yeah, critical thinking for the rest of my life, and like a love of underground music, and like a desire to understand things that put you off at first, right? Because pop music is essentially designed to be like non-offensive and catchy and like get you from like upon first listen. Whereas I remember the first time a guy in my high school, this guy Scott, like got in my car when we were 15 or 16, or I guess 16, I had a car. And he was just like, there's this new stuff and it's called Jungle, and like, you gotta hear it. And he put, it must've been like 95 or so. And he put it in he put a tape in. And I just remember being like, yeah, get it out, you know, like, like it's too fast. There's too much going on. And then now when I listen to that same tape, it sounds like so laid back and chill, because it's like years of it took like time to understand the music. And like, you know, when I went to my first party that had like a jungle room, and I went in there with the right cocktail of whatever in my system and heard it in the environment with people who knew how to dance to it and loved the songs. Like it's, you know, everything's really contextual, I think, when it comes to music. So, you know, I think in the context of Frank Zappa, you're talking about a guy who was, you know, music, it was a very like corporate era, and he was able to find commercial success while sticking it to the man, which I think is ideal.
It's so true.
You know, I've had moments of that. I think Banana Split was that in many ways. And it's great when you can make that work, when you can have something that is entirely not made to have mass appeal and have it transcend to people. I mean, even for better or worse, like, you know, by the time Paris Hilton was like standing on tables at Banana Split, it was like, I was like, okay, like we're going really like all the way with this. But also that's what was to be expected, you know, with AM and being in Hollywood and stuff like that. But it was just cool because we weren't taking a chance. Like, we were basically being like, we're going to play this music that is not meant for Hollywood. At the time, it wasn't clear where that music was really meant for. Like, they were going crazy for it in like Paris and London and like New York on a smaller scale. And like, this was before I think the term blog house even came to exist.
I pinned this particular point. I want us to come back to that about the whole mass appeal, but transcend, and then sticking it to the man. It's a fun topic for me because I've always felt the same. I don't want to go on a tear. I'm gonna bring that back up. I've made a very specific note about that.
Fantastic.
Because I think it's a very important thing. That's where I always say, like, don't follow the trends, like create the trend, or like create, like, you know, be more iconic, like defy the system. Don't just like jump in and follow the masses. Like,
sure,
you know. It almost extract yourself out of that and be like, no, I want to recreate the way I think I want to create, and then see where that goes with no restrictions. And I feel like that a lot of times people say, well, this is just going to be successful because we follow the formula. And I'm like, but that's not really innovation. And that's also really not pushing any boundaries. And also that means you're only doing it for popularity or money. And again, there's nothing wrong with getting paid. I just rather get paid for my soul. So for doing the right thing. But I want to come back to that.
Okay.
Quite a lot, actually. So question number 3, in your opinion, what's the best music-focused film for you of all time? And when I say music, it can be music film. It could be like a documentary, a rock.
Yeah, so we're talking, so like concert documentaries count too?
Yeah, absolutely.
Man,
absolutely.
I feel like I could have answered this so quickly a couple years ago before they made like 80 music documentaries, and I watched all of them during quarantine.
Right. And it could be fictitious too. It could be a fictitious, funny film too, as well. So it can be
sure. I mean, I would say scripted. I think School of Rock is one of the most perfect family films ever made. I mean, I don't have kids myself, but there's like nothing, you know, it's like PG-13, I believe, or something, and it's got, it's like Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and all this stuff, and like Jack Black doing his thing, and they talk a lot about different artists. Like I saw that movie in my 20s, but I remember thinking like, oh man, like if I had seen this when I was like 8 or 9, like I would be like even in a better place musically.
Right.
And I think that movie doesn't get brought up in terms of like people think of it as just like a comedy, but like Richard Linklater always does a really good job, I think, of educating people musically in his movies. Like the soundtrack to Dazed and Confused, I think is like how a lot of my friends and I learned about like that kind of late 70s like stoner rock stuff, and School of Rock is great like that, and he's great. But I mean, I think documentary wise, I mean, I don't know, does Ken Burns Jazz count as one movie?
Yeah,
I mean, it's a series technically.
Yep.
I want to say it's like 12 hours long.
Yeah.
But it is, if you can pay attention to it, it'll essentially teach you like everything you need to know about the history of American music. And it's so good. And the attention to detail is so outstanding, and it'll really, well, certainly made me rethink everything for better or worse. I saw it when I was young when it came out, but then I watched it again during quarantine, and I treated it almost like I was going to class, because like, you can only retain so much information at a time. So I'd be like, okay, like I would like wake up every day, have breakfast, and be like, all right, I'm gonna watch like 6 hours or like 4 hours, whatever it was, like a certain amount. And then I was like rewinding parts, and I was trying to really understand it, because it's so interesting. And just the way music moved. And because you're now talking about 100, that story starts like 80 to 100 years ago, which is wild. And it reminds you that the best, most influential artists of all, people like Duke Ellington and Louis Armstrong and these guys, and Miles Davis,
Ella
and
Fitzgerald,
they like, even after all of their successes and all of the important world-changing music that they made, that they still hit these rough patches where they felt like they weren't enough, and they disappeared and became reclusive, and then had comebacks. And then it's just like and that's at a time when there was only like people were putting out not as nearly as much music as we are now, obviously. And it's very interesting. And then to think of the impact that music is still having now, because
forever.
In the words of Quincy Jones, there's only 12 notes. So
I haven't watched the series. A few people have mentioned it to me, but I've watched a lot of different documentaries, and I researched a lot about music back in the day, just out of pure curiosity. But it was the history of American music, or music in America, or American music, however you want to say it. But jazz at its core. And it was very interesting to learn what was happening in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. And yeah, like all artists in anything, and all artists, that the relationship that they had with themselves, the relationship they had with the music, or their art, and the relationship they had with the people in delivering the art, being the medium. And it was very interesting to see the things that they go through. Plus, the times we were living in, like you said, then versus now. I mean, we have our own craziness going on.
Yeah.
But a very interesting them navigating those waters. So good choices. Last question. What's an important book or a podcast or creator or an Audible, or something that's just kind of maybe navigated your creativity, helps you navigate your creativity or passion?
I would say the book of this Subgenius. I don't know if you know about that, but it's kind of a joke Bible that was written like in the 70s by like a collective of like comic book artists and like weird writers that were all on weird drugs in the 70s. It's sort of like a combination of like a parody of like Mormonism and Scientology and all this stuff, and it basically explains that you're supposed to do as little as possible and just generally slack off, and that's your way to an afterlife with aliens on spaceships. Nice. And it was given to me by my Spanish teacher's stoner husband in high school. And he was just like, I think you'd like this. And I did, and I still look at it all the time. It's like impossible to finish. It's like, it's hundreds of pages. It's got like writing that's this tiny. They were definitely on like 70s amphetamines when they wrote it. But it's like, and it's got crazy illustrations. I think R. Crumb has illustrations in there, and like Gilbert Shelton, who did the Freak Brothers. And but there's movies about it. It's got, I want to say, tens of thousands, if not like hundreds of thousands of like actual like devout followers. And the symbol, I don't know, are you familiar with this book, with the book of the Subgenius?
I'm not.
Okay.
No.
The symbol of it, the god of the book of the Subgenius is the guy named Bob Dobbs, who was famously used for like the Sublime CD. It's like the like kind of classic 50s looking white dude with the pipe, who's a drawing, like he's like but that imagery has been used. I think like Flea has him tattooed on him or something. I mean, what doesn't Flea have tattooed on him?
That's also true.
But I don't quote me on that. So sorry, Flea. Fun note about Flea: he was original stage name was Mike B. the Flea.
Huh. Interesting. And then he found out he had it trademarked, and then was that right?
Yeah, he was like, I have a feeling that in 20 years this guy's gonna be somebody.
Right. First of all, thank you for those answers, and
Sure.
for the banter too, and like the back and forth. I appreciate it, and I'm gonna check that out.
It's a fun book
For everybody. For context, because you've been, you come with so much background experience. Can you go, like, I mean, you can start as far back as you want. Like, how did we get to here doing all the shows and all the different collaborations and things that you're doing now? You can give the cliff notes, obviously, but like, you can have any starting point you want. Where did it all begin, and how did we get here?
Man, I think about that probably too much, and I don't always know. I feel like I have a very good memory, and then every once in a while I'm like, oh, I forgot that's how this happened. I try to always remember who connected me to what, and how things started and how things got where they are, and then sometimes I try to be careful when I do a podcast like this, because a lot of times I'll say stories that aren't exactly correct, and then people hit me up and they're like, man, you're combining like 3 different things that happened, because that's what the human brain will do. Right. I believe the question, in the words of Martin Short, what was the question again? I believe it was, how did this all start? I guess DJing it started for me really young. I started DJing when I was 11 years old. So 1990 or 91.
Wow.
I remember one day I came home from school, and they had they had gotten themselves a CD player, like my parents. And so they had taken the record player that was in their room and just put it in mine. And they're like, now you have a record player, and I was like 7 or 8 probably. And my dad used to get like promos from people. He was friends like with people at the label. So people would just like send boxes of records to the house. And like, he was just like, anything that wasn't like someone he had heard of, he would just kind of throw it into my room. So like, weirdly, I was getting promos from a very, very young age. And for my birthday, when I was like, I think it was my 12th birthday, I guess, he hired a DJ to come play like for me and my friends. And I only knew a DJ as like the man who was behind the rappers, and had, when you're young, like I didn't have an understanding of music. Like I could barely play the guitar yet. So it was like, you don't know how music gets made, I guess, unless you're like a young genius, which I was not. And I saw this guy, and he showed up, and he had a box with every cool song ever, like everything me and my friends wanted to hear, and he played like the whole time, and we all danced. And then I saw my dad give him a bunch of cash, and I was like, that seems like the job for me. And I started doing it. I had a whole weird setup. I had my one turntable and like a Discman plugged into the amp, and like a Walkman plugged into it to play like stuff I recorded off the radio. And I started playing at my friends' like makeout parties, and you know, we were like 12 going on 13, so like that's when like it was like we were starting to have like boy and girl sleepovers, as long as like the groups were big and they were well monitored and stuff.
Right.
But like I remember like the very first time like setting up my little thing in my friend Julia's living room, and all the kids in my class coming in and like I had the 12-inch single for CNC Music Factory, Everybody Dance Now, which was relatively new at the time, and I put it on, and like I think the mom had like maybe like a little beacon light or a strobe light or like something that like she put on in the room, and like that was the first time that I like felt like what it was. Like I was standing behind the thing, like all like the like girls and guys from my class were dancing, and like I'm playing Everybody Dance Now, and like I was just like, oh, like I want to stand in this exact place forever. And it was many years after that until I was able to get that feeling again. Like I don't think I had a dance floor in front of me for like another 6 years, but like I think about that night all the time, and all these years later I'm essentially, you know, still chasing that feeling.
What's interesting is that and I think that a lot of people don't realize, they do, they don't. I think you're very fortunate that you realize it very young, that, oh, no, this is what I want to do. And this feels right, because anytime somebody's stuck, when we talk, you know, they're like, oh, I'm not really sure, you know, I want to go, I feel like this isn't fulfilling. And I'm like, when you were 13, anywhere between 12 and 21, I'm like, pay attention. There was stuff going on that your soul knew. And then society did its whole thing where it's like, you should go be responsible and get this job and do that and do this. Like, nah, like, because
I was able to, like, that's the thing, is I never ever questioned it, honestly, until recently.
Interesting.
I was able to, well, you know, I'm 42 years old, and like I said, like I kind of found this calling when I was very young. But you know, much like I don't know, like a cobbler or someone else who's got a profession that is not the same as it was when, you know, 30 years ago, you start to wonder, like, I mean, for example, I was going to NYU Film School, and I quit because I had a job opportunity to go work for Stretch Armstrong full time. That was the true turning point in a career in DJing and music, because I had met DJs like in the rave scene and stuff like that. But in 1998, when I met Stretch Armstrong, and he hired me to come intern for him, and I was there for the whole summer. And then I was the one who asked him, I was like, if I take a leave of absence from college, can I come work for you full time, and can you pay me and stuff? And he said yes. And then that was that from there. He called me one day, and his like flight was delayed from somewhere. I was just an intern. I was 19. I wasn't even allowed in nightclubs yet. And he called me, and he's like, my flight's delayed. I'm not going to be able to make it on time to my gig tonight. I'm going to be like 90 minutes late. He said, he goes, you're a DJ, right? And I was like, well, like he just knew like I had records and stuff, but like I wasn't, like, he just needed someone to open for him, essentially. And he assumed that I had more experience than I did. I was like a guy that liked to get stoned and go buy 12 inches and then like play them in my dorm room. And then every once in a while I got to play like a college party with like 7 other people that also wanted to be DJs and things. But I certainly had no experience like on like how to work a fully grown adult 1,000-person New York nightclub, you know? And so I was literally thrown to the lions, in a sense. It was a club called El Flamingo, and I walked in, it was already packed. There was like, I mean, that place probably held like between like 600-700 people or something like that, predominantly black crowd, because, you know, it was like a Stretch Armstrong night, and clubs at that point were there was a lot more like hip hop nights, where there was mixed crowd parties, as we called them in the 90s, but like the real shit was really predominantly black. And so I was like a kid from Beverly Hills in New York, being like in a summer between my sophomore and junior year of college, and I just had a really random collection of stuff. Like I didn't know how to program it. I didn't know like what I was supposed to play at that time for that crowd. I mean, I wasn't allowed in these places. All of these places were 21 and over. I wasn't dressed well. I had probably, dirty shoes and was unshaven. But the one song that I did have was Juvenile's Back That Ass Up. Like that was like one of the few like commercial records that I had. Because that was the thing, was I showed up and I started playing like all these like underground hip hop, like Fat Beats 12 inches that I had, and just no one's dancing. And I was kind of hearing murmurs in the crowd of like, who the fuck is this guy? And like, what's going on? And then I put on Back That Ass Up. With a song like that at that time, it's kind of like, it's like, like that, or like Blow the Whistle, or Next Episode, or like 50 Cent in the Club. Like, you don't have to be a good DJ. Like, just put those on like anywhere, anytime, and like everyone starts going crazy. So like, that was essentially the next time that I got to have that feeling that I had like 10 years prior. And like I played that record and the whole room just like erupted, and everyone was like, finally, like something we love. And like it was like everything I had done badly before was now forgiven, because like I was playing this song that everyone loved, and Stretch walked in, like I remember like halfway through that, and he was just like, "Oh, good, like you've been doing good." You know what I mean? Like, you just see like everything was fine, and that was the beginning of that. And then he started using me to open for him, and then my friend Joey Manda, he was the head of Def Jam for a while. At the time he was like working for Funk Master Flex, helping him like produce stuff, but he would bring me to DJ like the other side of stuff. Like it was like Italian hip hop parties, or like that we would play like the side room of Twilo. Actually, weirdly enough, my first two residencies were Twilo and Limelight, both while they were on their very last legs. So I played not in the main room of either of them, but I would play with Joey Saturdays at Twilo, which was the Junior Vasquez night. But Junior wouldn't come on until 4 a.m. And so they would have like a side room, which was for like smoking blunts and making out. And it was like upstairs. And so we would go up there and play hip hop from 10 to 4. And then at 4 o'clock, they would turn us off and they would pipe Junior Vasquez through the whole club. And then based on that, the promoter who was doing that room, Chris Rita, booked me to play in the HR Giger room of Limelight, which was like the 4th floor, and it had all these crazy alien skulls and HR Giger art in it. It was like a very small room, also for just like sex and drug use. Like it was a gross room. No one really came there to dance, and if they did, it was just for like a couple minutes before they like found a dark corner to do like whatever they needed to do. It was like the tail end of the 90s in New York. It was like the beginning of Giuliani's New York. So like everything was like, when I got there, like people were getting arrested for smoking weed and being like, what the fuck? Like, I've been sitting here smoking weed for 20 years. Like, why is this happening today? And that was kind of the vibe in those clubs. Like they had been operating, I think, kind of lawlessly for many, many years. And both of those places were owned, by the infamous Peter Gation, who was, I think, on trial like at that time. Because I remember them like confiscating my like weed bowl, like they found it in my DJ crates when I was coming in. I would have to carry 4 crates by myself up 4 flights of stairs, which I assure you was still, I mean, just the chiropractic bills alone from that is crazy. Because I would have one Odyssey bag over each shoulder and 2 metal crates in each hand, and I would go one step at a time. Like it was quite a process. So, shout out to whoever figured out CDJ technology. The fact that I can show up to a club right now with headphones and a USB is pretty great.
Right.
Pretty great.
You said some really, really cool things that sort of like when you're saying You're a DJ, right? And I think that a lot of times people have the idea of, well, I'll start when I'm ready. And we know that is funny because we're never ready. We just have to jump right in. And so I thought it was kind of cool that timing, no better way to to do it than to just jump in and figure it out.
Yeah, well, it's like throwing your kid in a swimming pool. Right?
Yeah,
it's like it's exactly literally what happened to me. And I tell people that always, whenever they say people ask me all the time, like, I want to learn how to DJ. Will you give me DJ lessons? And I'm like, I can't teach anyone how to do anything because first of all, I'm pretty sure I'm still not doing it exactly the right way. I just do it my way, for better or worse. And, but what I do tell them is I was like, what you need to find is someone who likes you enough to let you continue playing at their venue even though you're not that good. So either they just really, really like you, or they can't tell that you're not that good.
Right. While you're coming up.
I was just lucky like that. I was like, I used to, opening for Stretch was cool because it would just put me in the environment, and he would never show up until he had to play. Like, it's not like he would come and listen to me. Like, he would show up and get on. So like, I always had the benefit of seeing what he would do, because then I would sit there and watch him for the entire rest of the set. And he's one of the greatest of all time. So I was really lucky to have that. But even with that, like, I would ask him sometimes, like, hey, what is that song that you did that thing with? And his reply was often like, it's this, but like, hey man, like, don't hurt yourself. You know what I mean? It's just like, I'll tell you what this song is and you can go find this record, but like, you're not going to be able to do what I did with it. Cause like, I'm me, you know what I mean? It's like Jimi Hendrix can give you his guitar and you're not going to be able to play it like Jimi Hendrix. So, and then I just got like a couple other gigs like that where people just liked me for whatever reason, or like I was good enough, or there was, and and club owners are a funny breed, man. Like, they're all literally different. There was a guy, I mean, speaking of a funny breed, like there was a guy named Chris Breed who was like an infamous like LA club owner. He had like the Pig and Whistle and White Lotus and all these places. And it was one of the first gigs I had when I came back to LA. I was filling in for AM at a club called White Lotus, and I had just got back to LA, so I wanted to play like West Coast anthems, and I played MC Breed, No Future in Your Front, and this guy just comes up to me and he goes like, "You're playing MC Breed?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "My name is Chris Breed and I own this club." And I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "You want to play here every Thursday?" And that's just like based on one song. And given at the time I actually was a good DJ and like was ready for the job, but sometimes it's just that fucking simple. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And,
a lot of times
I played at that club for like a year and a half, like every Thursday, just based on that one song.
I feel like a lot of times that happens. I feel like that happens a lot of times because the other thing I was going to say too about, you're like, I didn't know what I could play. I hadn't done this before. And so I'm just going to try this. I'm try that. The less we're thinking and the more we're doing, the more things are happening, and it allows like these instances to just come about. If we're thinking too much, we're overanalyzing it, and we can't let the art be the art. We can't let the soul speak. So to Stretch Armstrong, shout out there, because it was like, I can literally even teach you, like movement for movement, but you're not my soul. I'm not your soul.
Yeah.
So I'm always going to deliver it differently no matter what. And then on top of that, like if you're not in your head, but you're in your action, stuff like that is going to happen all the time, because you're in the purpose, you're in the thing. And I think that's what usually is what attracts the people, attracts the vibe, or attracts the fan or the follower, the subscriber, and all of that stuff. It's like, ooh, like he's just in his zone. He's just in his zone.
And pretty much from that time until the pandemic, I literally never took a second to like really wonder what I was doing.
Interesting. Can we talk about that? Like, what you're thinking and what you're thinking. Well, because I know a lot of artists, I know a lot of people in the world period had started rethinking their, what do I really want to be doing? Like,
Yeah.
have I
well,
been
how
doing?
could you not?
Yeah, right. Like, and some were in their purpose, but maybe thinking, do I want to pivot? And others were not in their purpose, and be like, I need to get into something different fast. So I'd love to hear what you've
I'm
been experiencing.
very jealous of those who were able to, like, for example, my friend Tommy B went into quarantine as a party photographer and was like, oh my God, my whole, business has been taken away from me. And he started selling pizza off of his porch. Like, he started doing it like almost instantly, like 2 weeks into quarantine. And he figured out this way of scheduling it where people could come 15 minutes apart, and he had like the mask and gloves on. And if you wanted to like get the pizza and eat it and like talk to him for 10 minutes, you could hang out. But when the next customers came, like you had to leave. Like, it was entirely like met all the rules that we were supposed to be following at the time, but kind of gave us like a place to go. And like the people who were there before you and whoever was coming after you was probably one of your friends and someone you hadn't seen. And at that point, when it was like, can you believe we've been in the house for 2 weeks and I haven't seen you? Like, we didn't know what was laying ahead, obviously, but like he killed it. And now he's like an incredibly successful chef and restaurateur. Like he's opened like a brick and mortar in Silver Lake called L'Assorted, and he makes sandwiches and pizzas and like he's had like a full thing. And I'm just like, that is amazing. Whereas I mostly sat around and watched Ken Burns jazz, and like I really took advantage. I was just like, this is so cool. I'm getting unemployment, and which I did, obviously was never an option for, like, if you were a DJ between gigs, like if you didn't work for a month, you just didn't work for a month. Like, I was like, this is amazing. They have freelance unemployment. Like let's go. And I just like really enjoyed time off, because like I was saying, I never thought about what I was doing or where I was going. It was just like, DJ as much as possible everywhere you can. This is not going to last forever. Like I always had that mentality. I always felt like this is a young man's game. Because also when I started, Stretch was like one of the oldest DJs I knew, and he had just turned 30. There was like Grandmaster Flash was like probably like, the oldest DJ or something like that. And he wasn't like around doing like that many clubs at that time. He would do like special appearances or performances or whatever. But it was just like, I didn't know that there was a future where we have like David Rodigan and Fatboy Slim, Funkmaster Flex, like all these. I mean, Stretch is still killing it. Like it arguably at the height of his career right now. You have D Nice playing at the Hollywood Bowl. You know what I mean? Playing an open format DJ set at the Hollywood Bowl. Like who knew where this would go? Certainly not me, but I always believed in it. And when people told me that it wasn't a real job, I didn't really care. I just knew that I loved it. I think that's where the best stuff comes from, is when you don't think about it. That's why I don't like, it's a weird time right now to have to think about what's next and what I want to do. And like, the best advice that anyone ever gave me was to not look upon my past to dictate what comes next.
Exactly.
That I should, just like keep going and don't be like, okay, well, I've done all this and like everyone should just like recognize me for it, or whatever. Cause like, if that happens, then that's great. And I certainly hope it does. Like, I hope someone else figures out what happens next for me, but I don't know. It'll probably be a group effort.
Well, I think it will be. It will be. And maybe this conversation will serve as part of that. But I think there's a lot in there. First of all, let's address the fact that you said, people may not have always looked at it as a job, because I was basically into the internet since AOL days. Right. And now, but what's the job, right? And so even going to college and people were like, what's this internet thing? It's a fad. Email will still use. So I had to deal with, and then what's this Facebook thing? What's this Twitter thing? What's this Instagram thing? What's this TikTok thing? Like constantly resistance every step of the way.
At every turn. I mean, the amount of friends I had that wouldn't use Serato when it came out
Right.
or like the amount of friends I have that still won't acknowledge CDJs,
Mm-hmm.
is wild.
So a lot of people can easily question, well, what is it you're going to do, and what is it this, and what is it like? Don't worry about that. And so, but the biggest thing is that I always see the future belongs to the creatives, now more than ever.
I hope so.
What was also interesting is when you were talking about even last year, some had to make pivots fast because it was sort of like, I have to figure something out because timeframes with their money. Others had been going so hard for so many years and were like, you know what? I think I need a break just for a second, just because I haven't actually had one. So it's interesting. It was unique to watch everybody figure out different, things.
Well, I was also able to like maximize the small amount of DJing that I did,
Yes.
which was cool. Because one of the things that I always loved it when I would get done playing and someone was like, "Hey, yo, just so you know, we recorded that set. Like, is it cool if we post?" I was like, "Oh my God, that's great." Because it's always better to be recorded when you don't know that you're being recorded.
Right.
Because then you're not thinking about what you want it to sound like. You're just doing you, and then you can actually like hear what you need to change or do. Like you can hear, was this as good as I thought it was? Because DJing is different than other things. You're queuing up. When you're playing in a band, like you're hearing what everyone else is doing, and it's all like live. With DJing, you're rarely hearing what the dance floor is hearing, and you're just hoping that what you're doing is what you think you're doing. So like when you get the chance to be recorded, it's really cool. And so when I first started doing like Twitch stuff, I was a little weird. I was like, I don't want to do like it started with Mad Decent. Like right in the very beginning, they hit me up and said, do you want to come and do like a weekly show? We have a studio downtown that's all set up with like a green screen and stuff. Do you want to come DJ like Thursdays at 3 p.m.? And I was like, that's a weird vibe, man. Like middle of the afternoon on a weekday, like DJing for a room that had like 2 or 3 Mad Decent employees in it, like all with masks on, in the beginning of quarantine. Like I was just like, what is this even? And then I realized that I could come home and not only hear it back, but watch it back, which was something that aside from like Glenjamin and a couple other like videographers and things like that, where people would capture a few minutes of a set, I never was really able to like critically be like, okay, like what does it look like? Or like maybe that dance move I'm doing like is not so hot, like just like fun. Like I had never in my whole career really been like seen myself front to back. And so I did that weekly for a while with Mad Decent. And then when we realized lockdown was going to be not 6 to 8 weeks, but maybe 6 to 8 months, or maybe still now, that ended, and I started doing a thing monthly for Dirty Bird, which was it. And then by then, like there had been so much progression so fast in the streaming world, and I was working with this guy Corey Color Vision Paradise Unlimited, who was doing all the lighting and stuff. And so not only was I doing sets and like and able to hear them back in like full HD audio and video, but there was crazy graphics, and it was like an hour-long music video, and it was like, and all of the comments were like, we love this, and it was just like kudos. When you're playing mostly in a club, like there are people that say good, but you're more focused on like the negative parts, where it's like, why aren't those people dancing, or like people like requesting or like thumbs downing you, or like
Right.
those are the parts you remember or that you like internalize. Whereas I think in the streaming world, aside from like the rare troll, you mostly have people that are just being encouraging, which was really nice. And it was like just enough that I got to, like you said, take a real break after 22, 23 years of never taking a break. Like I would say that there was in between 1999 and the pandemic, I probably have never had more than a week or two go by without DJing. And even when I wasn't DJing, I was in the studio making music or like listening to promos every day, or you know what I mean? Like it was just a part of my, and I just like, I stopped hard, like for the Mad Decent thing, I was downloading stuff. And then when that ended, I was just like, I'm just going to play like old songs on Dirty Bird, and like I'm going to educate the youth, and I'm going to rely on this like 23 years of daily digging to play off of. Because also I was like, who wants to focus on the present or the future at this time when you could highlight all of these songs that maybe didn't get maybe things that I played once or twice like 10 years ago that maybe deserve a little more shine. Like as a crate digger, like I don't think I'd ever really thought of my computer as like a crate, like I was like, yeah, I've been just downloading stuff for 20 years, and you take it out, you play it once or twice. If it's not like a real classic that you play forever, you kind of forget about it. And that's what most of my sets were made up from, maybe things that didn't have as much of a place on like a big crowded dance floor. But and that was just enough. It was like I would play like 2 hours a month and I would get my fill, but I would get so much mileage from it because I had all these little clips. So like every few days I could post 5 or 10 minutes of me DJing with cool graphics and great sound on Instagram. And like the perception from everyone was like, oh man, you're like constantly killing it with these streams, which is actually how I came to Orlove, I believe, because when I was initially hit up to do the Jazzy Jeff and Rakim party, it was based on a set I had done with DJ Sneak that I uploaded to my YouTube, which we did for Soul Clap's E-Funk Festival. And it was a totally unplanned set. Like I was playing, and then he was on the schedule after me. So I called Sneak and I said, well, can I just come and do it from your house? And then that way the guys don't have to like futz around with the, link key or stream key, or I don't know how any of that shit works, mainly. And Sneak has an amazing streaming setup. So I was like, can I just come over there? And then it was like, yo, like we have 2 hours. Like, do you want to like sit on the couch while I play and then I sit down while you play, or like, do you want to just play together? And we ended up just going 3 for 3 for like the entire 2 hours. And who knew that would lead to at the time we were definitely just like stoned and grooving and enjoying like an all vinyl set. And then next thing I know, I'm being invited to come play with Rakim and Jazzy Jeff, which is like the craziest thing. I don't know what you guys are doing over there, but they're the best lineups. Like I just saw the one, and then Sneak is doing this one coming up with Crack and Smack and Czarface, which are also my homies from Boston. And well, I don't know Inspect the Deck like that, but DJ 7L is a good friend. And like these lineups are wild. And like I know. And the idea to have me not only play before those guys, but not play the obvious thing. I was asked to play house music or like funky house music, not unlike the set I had done with DJ Sneak, which I accepted as a challenge. Like I was like, okay, like I don't know that many DJs, and this is not a diss to anyone, but I don't know how many people would have the backbone to do what I did that night, which was sit there while people just look at you vexed, like we're here to see Jazzy Jeff and Rakim.
First of all, shout out to Matt Orlove for
the man.
I mean, honestly, like his talent in hearing and listening to music and piecing things together and piecing concepts together and piecing people together. I've been impressed since knowing him, because there's levels to him with the music. It's not just music. There's like these levels where, and you're like, I think that and that, yeah, that goes. We're going to do that. And I think if we do that with this, yeah, that's going to make sense. And it does. And it does. And
it's great. I mean, that man is an enigma to me. I know very little about him, but honestly, like everything that went on throughout the course of the booking of that and the performance itself and the little bit of time I got to spend with him during the show was kind of what I always wanted from like any promoter. Like he hit me up, he knew exactly what he wanted to do. He was very, especially for someone like me who is multi-genre and, you know, I'm mostly kind of left to my own devices. Like, hey, we're booking you, like, look at the room and do the best you can, which with my depth of, and I don't know, my wide selection can sometimes be confusing. He was like, this is what I want to do. I want a set that's like this. And I didn't even ask because I understood why, because like, I've always said that building tension and, you know, or I mean, I didn't invent this concept, obviously, like every musician, like any good musician knows that, you know, but like, tension and release is like what makes a good dance floor and what makes a good party. So it's like, that's why like the most basic of people just love like big buildups and shit, because it's just, you get that like every 2 minutes. But if you can do that over the course of the night, like that's how like people can really get that experience. And I loved that he was giving me an opportunity, or that, you know, Orlove Entertainment gave me an opportunity to kind of flex my ability to rock a hip hop crowd with house music in a way that I don't think has been done before, and certainly like at a show that was unprecedented.
Right.
You know, like you're talking about arguably the best rapper alive and or possibly of all times, and probably most definitely the most important DJ. I mean, you're talking about a man who's like, I mean, people forget. I don't know that I think people forget how many things Jazzy Jeff is to so many people.
Everyone.
You know what I mean? Like, besides being one of like the first rap, I mean, like, let's not forget, like, it was DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. You know what I mean? Like, at one point, like, he was the name that came before Will Smith.
Right.
Which is, you know, and Will Smith, one of the most bankable movie stars in the history of cinema. At one point, this man's name came before him. And let's not forget that he was on however many seasons of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Like, the man is a bona fide sitcom star. And continues to innovate. You know, like he was, you know, he's still on the cutting edge of DJ mechanics and is constantly using, you know, the newest software and pushing new ideas and expanding what he does. And he has his the playlist retreat where he invites DJs from all over the world to gather together and exchange ideas. I don't know if you've ever seen the video of like 50 of the world's greatest DJs all doing like back-to-back cutting together, like with like good times or something. Like, it's like something really basic, but it's just like everyone ever, like it's really crazy. I mean, the guy really cares, and he's like, you know, he and I have had a little bit of interaction over the years. He and AM were very close. I've had the chance to play with him 3 times, and it's, you know, our exchanges are mostly musical. We've never really had a conversation beyond one of us asking the other like what a specific song was and then emailing it. But, you know, my reverence for that man and my respect for him is so crazy. And the fact that he even remembers me makes me like pretty excited. Like, when he walked on the stage, it was like, man, it's been years, you know, and gave me a big hug, and it was just like, oh man, like I forget that I know this man. Like, that's how it, you know, important I think to the world. And then obviously I don't think I've ever even been anywhere near Rakim unless he was like I mean, you know, he's a very, as I understand it, reclusive individual. I mean, he has like his autobiography that I shined a little bit of light on him, but it was he's I mean, talk about enigmas. Like, he's a very interesting guy, you know, and his body of work he's got a lot of stuff, but it's it's limited, and
Mm-hmm.
and he's got so many classics, like as exemplified by that night where he just like rattled off like everything, and like the
Yeah.
whole audience knew like everything, and he did, you know, it was crazy.
Well,
It still doesn't seem real to me, even like a few weeks later. Wow, it felt surreal when I put, like, my friend who came with me were like, this seems wild. And when I got the booking for it, you know, which was a long time ago, I think we were still in lockdown when this was all arranged, like in like April or May or something. I was just like, Rakim and Jazzy Jeff, like, is that even
that's possible. That's
something that happens, you know? And I'm there, you know, like I was just like, and like I think back on, like, I almost like, it's one of those things where I can't think about it too much. I just have to like let it exist. And
yeah. Well, you know, Matt was very, like, first of all, again, he knows exactly, like, with a vision, he'll always be very clear on, this is what I want and this is how I can see it, and all this stuff. And he was excited because, you know, he was he's like, do you know much about, you know, Mike B? And I was like a little, you know, I just heard some, you know, some music and stuff. And he's like, no. He's like, just go. So he really, not only does he really know what he wants, but he, like, the excitement was both ways, because he was like, just like, check this out. Go check all this out. Go here, go there. And I did. I'm like, damn. And he's like, this is the vision. You know, like, I was like, so again, that's where, like, where I think he's very uniquely talented in thinking through all of that stuff. And, you know, I know we're constantly love festing on Matt Orlove, but I really respect that. And I was like, when he put those two together, I'm like, oh my God. And then he's like, and then here are the people that, like, compliment it. And I think this is how it should look. And I'm like, this is a lineup. You know, and he's like, it's only the return. I'm going to do a few more, and then, you know, we'll see where this goes. And here's how I'm going to do it. I was like, wow. And, like, to your point, so,
which,
you know,
is cool for me as someone who always, I mean, I was always I would roam around at raves. Like, I loved, like, places. I always wanted to go to places that had 2 or 3 rooms, and the clubs in New York were also like that. It was less like that in LA. Some places had like a side room, but like, I love the places that would have 3 or 4 genres, because it made it so that I didn't have to just do one thing the whole night.
mm-hmm.
And I think that that's where my style comes from, which is trying to present all of the different things that are, like, when I end up playing gigs where they just, like, I'll play house music for 7 hours, but even in there, like, I don't want to just play like tech house or jackin' house or disco house or classics, or like, it's like, I want to do all of it, and I want to go up and down, like, you know, like, the Rolling Stones didn't just play one kind of rock and roll. They made love songs and slow songs and went up and down, and you listen to their albums and it was all around. And I feel like that's how a night out should be. And that's what hip hop DJing is, you know, like, you play R&B in the beginning, and then you play classics,
right,
and then you start playing the bangers,
right,
and then you play the new stuff, and then you dip into some reggae, and then you go up tempo and play some house classics, and then maybe you play like all the new bangers again at the end. And like, I kind of I wanted to take that approach and bring it to dance music, because I mean, I'll play sets where I'll play drum and bass and gabber in a house music set. And I think if presented the right way by the right team, but, you know, in the words of Stretch, you know, for anyone who sees me do that and tries to do it the same way, you know, don't hurt yourself.
You know, right. You know, and by the way, and I wanted to ask what you got coming up, but I wanted to, before talking about what's coming up, was really cool about you talking about the streaming and Twitch, and, you know, seeing this, like, new wave. First of all, for people like me, I was so relieved last year to be like, finally, you all get it, you know, like, you all get it, like, because the utopic version is you do something amazing live everywhere, and that's great. And I would never take away from the live audience. It's an amazing thing, but this other area can help kind of balance you to be like, I now do, because, and this has been a topic with some DJs, like, or, you know, hey, I'll do less shows, but I still make, you know, I earn here, but I also diversify and earn here now, so I can have more of, some time with myself or some other things that I want to do, because this allows the flexibility to still earn like I was over here, but now over here, and connect even more, like even wider in less time. I mean, that's the beautiful part about tech when used appropriately, is like you can do more with less, not to take away the art, but to expand its impact and balance your life. And that's why I was saying the future belongs to creatives, because with so many different things, to be like, you know what, like I still love this, but how can I redo? Like, and you'd see music producers like, you know what, I want to teach a little bit of my craft for people. Like, I'll do an online, mastery course of like, here's this with that. And then other people are like, you know what, like, I think I'll open up a merch store, and you guys tell me, like, what are you feeling on designs? Like, let me play with another area. And then others are like, you know what, I'm going to start painting. People are like,
yes,
I'll buy your painting. You're like, cool.
My wish more than anything was that I was more of a self-starter and more enterprising in that respect, because I think I got so wrapped up in DJ life that I did all my streaming from like other people's studios and other people's stuff. And even though I have a whole setup that I kind of started here in my studio, I have yet to actually get that going. But I do believe that there is a huge future in it, and you reach a very different audience. You have, and especially if you're streaming from your own thing, then everyone who's there is there to see you. It's not like a nightclub, right, where like sometimes people stumble in and they're like, what the hell is this? And they have, different ideas about what they want to be going on. So it is really cool. And you're absolutely right. Like, in the big, like when it's like I said, when I started, I was like, oh, who wants to DJ like in the middle of the day in front of a green screen? And then I did it, and I was like, I want to DJ in the middle of the day in front of a green screen. It's certainly easier than just DJing in a smoke-filled room in the middle of the night where everyone's like screaming on drugs and spilling shit everywhere. Like I was like, there's actually something. I was able to play some of what I believe were the best sets of my life because of how. I mean, I don't think I had played like alone in a room since I was in college. Like, right. Like I don't really remember the last time I sat there with one other person watching me and just DJing. And I definitely wasn't as good as I am now. So it was really cool to be able to craft sets where like no one is talking to me, and there's no variables, and there's no water dripping from the ceiling, or right. No one's gonna tap me on the shoulder and say that they're supposed to play, or like, like it was very peaceful kind of. I had like the first time I did Nala's TV party on Dirty Bird, when they had me come guest, I cried while I was playing. It was the first time I've cried while DJing before, but I was only when playing like songs by recently deceased friends and things like that. This was like a weird, like it was a tear of joy for the crap for DJing, because I think like in the beginning of the pandemic, the term non-essential was so devastating to me. I had never really heard that before, and they were just like, all non-essential workers, like just stay. And I just kept thinking about it. I was just like,
I'm essential on music.
I was just like, people don't need us. and they've made it incredibly clear. And
disagree.
And just being at home and sitting around and not knowing if anything was ever going to be the same. And in that moment, I believe Nala played before me and Richie Panic were playing after me. And that's two incredibly talented people that are like on different ends of the spectrum. Like Richie's been around, I think maybe even longer than I have. We're about the same age, but he's been doing stuff in San Francisco forever. He's a like absolute legend who I think he does the Lights Down Low party and was a part of the Blow Up SF and a bunch of stuff. And then Nala, who is a young talent, like kind of up next Dirty Bird artist. And even though we weren't like, it was still at a time where we weren't like touching or hugging each other, and we were all staying 10 feet away from each other, but like I was playing and they were like on opposite sides of Corey's warehouse, like dancing. And like, I felt that even though it was just 3 people, there were it was probably like 800 people watching online. And I wasn't really like keeping up with the chat because I was trying to really appreciate this moment where I was like, man, I've been just chatting with everyone for several months. Like on the Matt Decent show, I was very active in the chat and was trying to shout everyone out and do Twitch stuff. But like in this situation, I was in a warehouse and they had the smoke machine and lights were changing. And I was able to kind of close my eyes and just like feel the magic of music, whether it's me playing or not, like just amplified music in a warehouse. Like even though there was only 3 other people in it, it was, I think, stronger and possibly like more meaningful than like anything I had done before. And I just I feel deeply, but I'm not a big crier. And I felt the tear coming and I was like, this is good. Like this is good.
Yeah.
And I think from then on, I don't know. I was like, I don't need to do this 4 nights a week. I just need to, when I do it, have it mean something, which I think was, really cool about that Rakim and Jazzy Jeff show, because, there will probably be nights that are like that, but like that was a very unique experience, I think.
You were saying earlier, like, oh, well, wanting to rethink, some things. The cool thing is it shows that the possibilities are expanding now more than ever. What do you have coming up? Is there anything in particular, you want to share that you're working on, or about to do or have fun with?
Yeah, I've got I don't know if he's awake yet or not. He was still asleep when we started. I got Oliver Dollar in the other room. He's my longtime good friend and collaborator who's just arrived here from Berlin. He's on his first tour allowed out of Europe, which is exciting. And he and I are going to work on some new stuff. Ardalan is coming by next week to work on some stuff with us. And then speaking of which, I'll be at the Dirty Bird Campout, which is October 15th through 17th in Modesto. And I'm doing Holy Shipwrecked in December, which is like the new incarnation of Holy Ship. Obviously, we're not allowed on cruise ships, I think, at the moment, but this is like a resort part, like a 3-day inclusive situation. I don't know. It all seems overwhelming and crazy to me. But all of these things will happen. It's much like the Rakim and Jazzy Jeff show, where I'm like, this can't be real, and then it happens. But yeah, I'm just taking all of those things like one by one. But that's essentially it. I have not been as active in the studio as I would like to have been, but there's plenty of stuff out there that people can check out. I've got my project Pools, which is DJ Morse Code and I. We put out an album. We finished and released an album during quarantine called Sunned, which is out on Razor and Tape. You can get on vinyl or digital. And I have my most recent release is called Yeah, the Acid Song, which is on Dirty Bird Records, which is out now with remixes from Lou Belsky and Salva, which I'm very proud of. It's a song I made with Boy Steven and Robin Katz a while ago, and I played it. You want to talk about the magic of streaming? I did a pre-record for my New Year's Eve set on Dirty Bird. Like, we recorded it like December 16th to be aired on New Year's Eve. And I was able to time travel somehow and be like, all right, like this is what's going to go down. And I decided I was going to like kind of open my set with this unreleased crazy 7 tempo change, 7-minute long acid techno narrator record that I had made years before with a couple friends. And I just remember thinking, like, I'm going to have an audience of people that are going to be sitting at home on New Year's Eve. Dirty Bird has a big following. I'm going to be playing right before like Amtrak and Claude Von Stroke. I was like, why not showcase like the weirdest unreleased song that I have? And I did, and if you check like the chat transcripts from that show, like Von Stroke essentially signed the record like in the chat. Like people were just like ID, because that's what goes on when you watch people DJ on Twitch and they can't Shazam it. And I was like, I made this record, and if you guys like it, I'll put it on my Bandcamp tomorrow, because I'd gotten in the habit of just putting stuff on Bandcamp during lockdown because they were doing a lot of cool stuff. I believe in Bandcamp. I think it's a terrific platform.
It's incredible.
And yeah, it's really great. It really gives, I mean, who knows what the future of it is. They've been able to preserve its magic for as long as they have. And I really appreciate that about them. But anyway, Bandcamp aside, Von Stroke was just like, no, like, don't do that. Like, send it to me. Let's put it out. And then here we are, a few months later. And I have a recent release on Dirty Bird, probably like one of the most influential and relevant electronic music labels of the last 10 15 years.
Speaking of, I wanted to bring that up. Where can everybody find you, whether the track or you, and support you and get more of the music, and just kind of like following the journey? Where are like all the places they can find you?
Like social media and stuff?
Everywhere, or like social media, or like the music, and wherever, everything. Give the audience everything.
I'm the Mike B DJ on Instagram, and on SoundCloud. And then, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I would just Google the Mike B, and you get me.
You get everything.
Yeah, it's. I mean, who knows? Who knows where we'll be in a couple of weeks or what's going on? I've got other than the recent Dirty Bird release and those gigs that I mentioned, it's kind of hard to tell what's next.
That's when you know you've done some things, when you're like, you just have to Google it to find everything you need.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, there's pools. There's my drum and bass project, Camo UFOs. We have a release upcoming on Elastic Rhythms, which is a great label. Some young DJs named Boondock and Morelia, who are very, very talented guys. We have a remix from Sinistar and from Bro Dog Man Dude, which is one of my favorite names in music right now. And then there's also Brillstein, which is my house alias, which is just straight up funky house music, no multi-genre, no ups and downs. Straight, like, I needed something that was specific. That's why I have the side projects like Camo UFOs and Pools. Like, every once in a while, I need to know exactly what I'm doing. Like, it's just nice to be like a person who just does this kind of thing.
Organized chaos.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then I got most of my ideas for that kind of stuff from Fatboy Slim, who was kind of my, and John Spencer, who were probably two of my, I think, the ultimate like multi-alias musicians. And
that's incredible.
That's why I keep going with all changing my name for stuff, and like not necessarily always receiving credit for something I did, but like knowing that it was me, like, still brings me some kind of joy, I guess.
Yeah.
So I think it's a 90s thing, because now everything is like so broken down. Like, every time someone has a hit track, it's like an Instagram of like, well, here's how I made this, and here's, like, all these things where like there used to be like so much like mystery and like, lore behind stuff you love, and I kind of like that. Like, it still makes me chuckle when people are like, oh, you're Brillstein, and I'm like, yeah, because it's like I never really put a face to it, or your Pools, because we made a point of never putting a face to Pools. Like, Pools releases are always just imagery. Purist. And there you go, you get
a purist. You're pissed. Yeah, I totally get it. Man, this has been absolutely incredible having you on. And
thank you. And what a pleasure.
And I'm based in Scottsdale, and Matt Orlove is in LA, but I come out there. I come out there often, so I can't. I look forward to meeting you in person, man. And
yeah,
just,
same.
But then just talking about I really appreciate having you on and talking about the culture, the music changes, the changes in general from last year, the long run, the switching it up, not being afraid to be like, you know what, I think I want to like pivot in ways, and it's okay if I don't really know. Like sharing all this stuff was really, really cool, and I think it's very, very helpful for a lot of people too to be like,
I hope so.
You know, yeah, I absolutely, but because I don't think sometimes those conversations are happening enough, and people just naturally think like, oh, we have all the answers, and I've moved into this new thing, and it's like, well, hold up a second, how did we arrive there, and like, what's the in between? So I appreciate having you on, man, and
absolutely, thanks for having me.
And sit tight for a second. We'll connect you offline here, but for everybody listening, the Mike B DJ on Instagram and SoundCloud, but you can also Google him, THE Mike B as in boy, the Mike B. You all probably know who I'm talking about, but anyways, Google him. You'll find everything that you need and all the different work that he's done and he's doing, and everything that's coming up. And for all of you guys just tuning in to On Top of the Covers each week, it means so much to us and our movements and to the contribution of music culture, art, entrepreneurship, creativity. Also, thank you guys for constantly giving us 5-star feedback on Apple. It means a lot. Please continue to do so. It helps expand the show. As I mentioned earlier, you can follow us on all major platforms at We Are Orlove. Myself at Matt Gottesman on Insta. Yes, it's us behind the brand. We're always answering them if you guys reach out. And then you can also, if you're listening to this right now on Apple or Spotify or Google or iHeart or any of the dozens and dozens of platforms, you can watch this on YouTube. Please go there, subscribe, watch this video. You can leave comments. We answer them as well too. We're on it. We love you guys. We love this community, and we're out.